Thank you very much, Ishwar Krishna Prabhu, for playing a wonderful song. I just walked in, so I'm not gonna try to name individually. I want to, but I don't want to miss because I was not here constantly. Some people, some devotee may have joined earlier and left. I don't want to miss their name, but thank you very much for having a wonderful journey. So we will continue reading from the Jaiva Dharma by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We read the Tronodapi Sunichana Taror Iva Sahisnuna Hamanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. Then it says, within himself, Sannyas Thakur seriously considered the following. I regard all these Vaishnavas as my gurus, yet they are now offering obeisances to me. What future does my spiritual life hold? Way down with such thoughts, his footsteps trod heavily back to his guru. He prostrated himself before Paramhansa Premadas Babaji, who had come to the woody retreat of Sri Madhvi Malati Mandap to chant Harinam. Seeing the wonderful transformation in Sannyasi Thakur, both in attire and sentiment, Paramahansa Premadas Babaji stood up, embraced his disciple, and showing him with cascading tears, said, "O my dear Vaishnava Das, I feel great spiritual exhilarations by the touch of your blessed body." Babaji's pronouncement gave Sannyasi Thakur new name, Vaishnava Das, to replace his old one. This day began a new and wonderful life for Sannyasi Thakur, helping him to shed the stigmas of the Mayavadi's false ego, the saffron robes, and the false pride of considering himself in possession of vast knowledge on account of his designations as a sannyasi. Later in the afternoon, Vaishnava from Navadvip Dham and Sri Godruma assemble in the bowers of Pradyumna Kunj to receive spiritual instructions and blessings from Paramahans Premadas Babaji. They were patiently seated all about him, softly chanting Harinam upon their tulsi beds. Chanting and saintly association exerted a wonderful effect upon the Vaishnavas, and spiritual emotions welled up within their hearts. Their eyes brimming with tears, they called out, "O my Sri Gauranga, Prabhu Nityananda, O my Lord, Sitanath, all glories to Satchinandan, son of Sri Sachimata." They discussed Krishna conscious topics with each other. Some were circumambulating Tulsi Devi, and others were greeting one another with prostrate obeisances as Vaishnavadas arrived upon the scene. First, he circumambulated Tulsi Devi, then fell to the ground, rolling in the dust, tread by the hallowed feet of the Vaishnava saints. Some of the senior Vaishnava whispered, "Is he not the Sannyasi Thakur? Look at him, what a miraculous change." Still rolling on the ground, Vaishnava Das began to petition the assembly. Quote, "Today, I'm extremely grateful to have received the dust from the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas. By the mercy of my Gurudev, I have come to know in full that for the Jiva, the dust of the lotus feet of the pure Vaishnavas, the sanctified water of his footbath, known as Charanamritam, and the remnants from his prasadam plate, known as Adharam Adharmrita, are the three transcendental ingredients constituting both the doctor's prescriptions against bhavarag, the material disease, as well as the appropriate diet for the patient. Their potency is not merely restricted to curing the material disease of nations. Even one who has already been cured of the material disease is protected against reinfections by the further inoculations of the highest spiritual bliss. My dear Vaishnava saints, please do not think that I'm making an austere exhibitions of my erudition. In fact, recently the demon of false pride has been exorcised from my heart. I was born into a Brahmana family, studied all the different scriptures, and finally entered the renounced order of life. My false ego knew no bounds. Nevertheless, since the time I was first attracted to the Vaishnava philosophy, the seed of humility has been implanted in my heart. Now, gradually, by your grace, I have discarded the arrogance born of high lineage, the prestige of material education, and the pride that so often accompanies the exalted positions of sannyas. Now, therefore, I have concluded that I am simply a saltless, infathomable soul. My life is meaningless without finding the sanctuary of the lotus feet of the Vaishnava. My birth as a Brahmana, my scholarship, and the renounced religious order were inexorably dragging me into the dark well of illusion. I have opened up my mind to you, Vaishnava, without reservation. So now you are free to deal with me, your servant, in any way you deem fit. Many of the Vaishnavas, after hearing Vaishnavadas' earnest confessions, address him saying, quote, O saintly soul, we have always been greedy to receive the dust from the feet of the Vaishnava of your stature. Please kindly offer it to us and make our lives worthwhile. You are the receptacle of the Babaji Maharaj divine grace. Thus, sanctify us by your association, as it's stated in the Bruhan Naradya Purana as follows. Bhaktistu Bhagavad Bhakto Shangena Parijayate Satsangaha Prapyate Pumbihi Shukruti Purva Sanchitaye. Devotional sentiments are evoked by the purifying association of advanced devotees. The jiva is able to come into the close contact with a pure devotee only by acquiring sufficient pious results from many previous births. We were able to attain your holy association only on account of the piety we have accumulated in our past lives, which has fostered bhakti. And now, on the strength of your association, we are hopeful of achieving pure bhakti to the Supreme Lord. Once these mutual exchanges between the sincere and humble Vaishnavas were concluded, Vaishnavadas took his place to one side of the seated assembly, enhancing its dignity. The new chanting bits and the beatback he carried in his hand acquired an auspicious aura. As this august assembly counted another very fortunate soul in its midst that day. On that very day, another fortunate soul, a gentleman from Santipur, was seated in the gathering of Vaishnavas. From childhood on, this person has studied Arabic and Farsi, leading him to adopt the mannerisms of the ruling Muslims, nobility, and bringing him position and prestige in the land. As a resident of Navadvip, he belonged to a high Brahmana lineage and had inherited vast properties of land. He had become an expert in the art of diplomacy and politics, and for many years he had been exploiting his positions of power for his own advantage and had enjoyed many benefits. But simple happiness still eluded him. As a last resort, he had begun to chant Harinam. Early in life, while still a young boy, expert in the field of Indian classical music, had taught him, and he considered that such instructions qualified him to occasionally lead the kirtan sessions of the Vaishnavas. However, when previously he had led some kirtans, the Vaishnavas were apparently not fond of his typically palace court classical touch. Nonetheless, he had introduced these classical variations into the kirtanas, oblivious of the Vaishnavas' feelings. Attempting to parade his musical ability, he had started at a faces of the Vaishnavas, awaiting a response, hoping for some appreciation. For quite some days now, this had continued. However, quite suddenly, a few days earlier, he had unexpectedly started to feel increasing pleasure in singing Harinam. Thus, he had taken up residence in the house of Vaishnavas of Sigodrum to enable himself to participate more conveniently in Kirtan with the Vaishnavas of Sri Navadvip Dhawan. Today, his present landlord had accompanied him to the gathering of the Vaishnavas in the woody bowers of Pradyumna Kunj. While sitting there, he had observed keenly, low, humbly the Vaishnavas treated each other. He also attentively listened to the talk, Vaishnavadas, during which certain doubts had welled up in his mind. Already an eloquent speaker, he boldly addressed the assembly, inquiring as follows. Quote, the religious scripture, the Manu Samhita, and other Shruti Dharma Shastras have described the Brahmana as the highest class of man in the social order. Further, they have prescribed Tiya Sandhya Vandana, the 3 daily chanting of the Brahma Gayatri Mantra, and other prayers as the Nitya Karma, daily eternal religious duties of the Brahmanas to be performed without exception. If this be so, then why are the activities of the Vaishnava opposed to these religious duties? So Vaishnavas are not fond of dialectics. Had this question been raised by caste Brahmanas, who are known to be argumentative, the Vaishnavas would, to avoid confrontations, have declined to answer. However, in this case, since the inquirer was devotionally inclined and participant in their kirtans, everyone considered that if Sri Paramahansa Premadas Babaji were to answer the question, it would very much satisfy the assembly. Babaji Maharaj respectfully heard the unanimous decision of the Vaishnavas. He first offered prostrate obeisances to the assembly and then began to speak. Dear exalted Vaishnavas, if you have no objections, then let the stalwart Vaishnavadas tackle these questions exhaustively. Everyone approved of this suggestion. Vaishnavadas felt very elated upon hearing his Guru's suggestion, and with sincere humility, he began to deliberate aloud. Quote, I am an extremely fallen soul in the dire condition. It would be most presumptuous of me to speak anything before this learned and august assembly. Yet also I cannot contradict the command of my Guru. Thus, I have decided that whatever knowledge I have received by the way of the nectarian instructions from the lotus lips of my Guru, I shall sincerely strive to repeat from memory. He then walked up to Paramhans Premadas Babaji and smeared the dust of his lotus feet all over his own body and head. Standing erect, he started his dissertations. Quote, let the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, the embodiment of divine bliss and the ultimate source of all partial and plenary expansions of the Absolute Lord, whose effulgence is Brahman and whose partial manifestation is Paramatma, the super soul within all living entities, inspire us with superior intelligence. It shows that why we follow those prayers before we speak, how we should offer the obeisances to the assembly. This is nice etiquette that we can imbibe in our life. The Manu Samhita and other Dharma Shastras written down by other great sages are Smruti Shastras, corollaries written in pursuance of the original Shruti Shastras, known as the Vedas, which are eternal transcendental sound directly manifested from the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, and are thus absolutely self-perfected and free of mundane defect. Being corollaries in pursuance of the directions of the Vedas, the Dharma Shastras are held in high esteem, just as the law books defining authorized and unauthorized actions in human society are similarly highly regarded throughout civilized society. In regard to religious practice, human nature is divided into two states, Vaidhi, regulated by the rules and regulations of the Shastras, and Raganuga, spontaneous attractions to the Lord's service. As long as the consciousness is under the influence of the material illusion of Maya, the guidance of the Vaidhi practice remain an important necessity. However, once the consciousness shakes off the shackles of Maya, it leaves the Vaidhi state and manifests its innate Raganuga nature, which is the Jiva's original and pure constitutions, transcendental and free from all material inebriety. So we should become one day Raganuga devotee, not the Vaidhi devotee. We are following rules and regulations, but we need to go beyond. The sannyas ashram is certainly the most elevated of the four ashrams, and the Brahmana Varnas is the best among the four Varnas. The crest jewel of all scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 17, 15 through 21, states in this regard as follows. Varnanam ashramanam cha janma bhumi anusari nihi asan prakrutyo nurnam nicher nikotar motamaha. Corresponding to the specific part of the universal form of the Lord, from which the Varnas and ashram appeared. The respective high or low propensities are formed accordingly. The feet and legs are the lower anatomy, from which the Sudra Varna and Grahastha ashram are respectively produced. Hence, the Sudra Varna and Grahastha ashram are afflicted with a lowly nature. The mouth and head are of the upper anatomy, from which the Brahmanas and Sannyasis are respectively produced. Hence, they are of the highest nature within the society. Samo damas tapashocham santo sakshantir arjavam mad bhaktischa dayav shatyam brahma prakrutyayas tvima. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, cleanliness, satisfaction, tolerance, simple straightforwardness, devotion to me, mercy and truthfulness are the natural qualities of the Brahmanas. So I think the time has come that we should stop. We should remain punctual. With those thoughts, always remain happy, jubilant, and totally fearless. And whoever you come across, give them a kind word that their life can also become successful and totally fearless. With those thoughts, I would like to offer my humble obeisances at the dusk of these wonderful devotees who take so much austerity to join every morning to support all the devotees' devotional practice. And we should remain totally in debt to them. From Houston, from India, from New Jersey, Virginia, Boston, Boise, Atlanta, College Station, San Jose, Tempe, Phoenix, Dallas, Detroit, Chicago, Palatine, Naperville, Philadelphia, and Atlanta. Vanchakalpa, Charlotte also, and Alachua. Vanchakalpatarubhasya kripa sindhubhaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you very much. Have a very blissful day. As we have started our day with the right mood, just maintain the mood and always try to remember Hare Krishna Mahamantra whenever you get a chance.